Have you ever faced a moment so critical that one wrong decision could change everything? Abigail did. Imagine a woman standing between an army of 400 men and certain destruction, armed with nothing but her wisdom, courage, and faith. What would you do in her place? Abigail's story is one of extraordinary bravery, a woman who defied danger, disarmed a future king, and saved countless lives. She wasn't just a wife to a reckless husband or a figure in the background. She was a peacemaker who turned chaos into reconciliation. Through her humility and God-given wisdom, Abigail changed the course of history and left us lessons that resonate even today. The Bible overflows with treasures of wisdom, and Abigail's story is a shining gem. As we journey through her life, we'll uncover the hidden strength of a gentle spirit, the power of faith in action, and how God can use ordinary people to bring about extraordinary change. Join me as we dive into one of the most inspiring and life-changing stories from Scripture. In the heart of Israel's rugged wilderness, a time of unrest and uncertainty reigned. David, a fugitive from King Saul, gathered a band of loyal followers as he navigated the challenges of survival. This was not a time of peace, but of turmoil, where disputes often escalated into violent confrontations. Amid this backdrop, the story of Abigail begins, a story of wisdom, courage, and faith that would alter the course of history. David's men, weary from protecting the landowners from marauding raiders, sought provisions to sustain their mission. The wilderness offered little, and survival depended on the goodwill of others. Nabal, a wealthy but foolish landowner, became the center of this unfolding drama. His name, meaning fool, foreshadowed the conflict that was about to ignite. Yet, it was within this chaos that Abigail's remarkable character would shine. Nabal's estate stood in Maon, a region known for its fertile lands and sheep-rearing. He owned thousands of sheep and goats, symbols of immense wealth in that era. However, his riches were contrasted sharply by his arrogant and harsh personality, making him difficult to approach. His wife, Abigail, on the other hand, was described as intelligent and beautiful, a stark contrast to her husband's crudeness. David's request for provisions was not unreasonable. His men had protected Nabal's shepherds, ensuring their safety and prosperity. Yet when approached with a humble plea, Nabal responded with disdain and insult, dismissing David as a mere rebel. This act of disrespect sparked David's anger, setting the stage for a potential bloodshed that seemed inevitable. The tension was palpable. David, a man of action, declared his intention to avenge the insult, rallying his men to prepare for an attack. His anger was not merely personal, but also rooted in the cultural norms of honor and respect. Nabal's response had crossed a line, threatening not only David's pride, but his mission's survival. Amid this brewing storm, Abigail became aware of the unfolding crisis. She understood the stakes and the risks involved. While others might have hesitated, paralyzed by fear or uncertainty, Abigail chose a path of courage and wisdom. Her story would soon reveal that even in the midst of conflict, a single voice of reason could turn the tide and restore peace. The stage was set. A reckless man had provoked a future king. A confrontation loomed on the horizon. Yet in this volatile moment, Abigail's actions would demonstrate that wisdom and grace could triumph over pride and anger. Amid the rugged wilderness of Maon, where disputes and survival intertwined, Abigail stood as a beacon of grace and wisdom. The Bible describes her as a woman of good understanding and of beautiful countenance. 1 Samuel 25:3. This combination of inner intelligence and outer beauty made her a rare and exceptional figure in a time when women's voices were often overlooked. Abigail's life was far from easy. Married to Nabal, a man described as harsh and surly, she managed to navigate a challenging household. Nabal's reputation as a fool was well known, yet Abigail's presence provided balance and stability. Her intelligence and diplomacy were likely what preserved their household's success, despite her husband's impulsive and reckless behavior. Abigail's beauty was not merely physical, it was deeply rooted in her character. She possessed a wisdom that came from understanding human nature, a discernment that allowed her to see solutions where others saw only problems. She knew when to act, when to speak, and when to remain silent, qualities that would soon be tested in extraordinary ways. While Nabal's wealth afforded them status, Abigail likely understood the fleeting nature of material riches. Unlike her husband, whose arrogance made him blind to danger, Abigail's awareness of her surroundings and the needs of others showcased her depth of character. She was not merely a passive observer in her own life, but a proactive figure who sought to bring peace and stability wherever she could. In a society where women were often relegated to the sidelines, Abigail's intelligence allowed her to step into roles of leadership when circumstances demanded it. Her ability to think quickly and act decisively would soon prove to be her greatest asset. Yet, her wisdom was paired with humility, a combination that made her all the more extraordinary. Abigail's presence in the story is a reminder that true beauty comes from within. It is a reflection of a heart aligned with wisdom and grace, a character rooted in strength and understanding. She was a woman who understood the power of words, the value of peace, and the importance of honoring others. As we delve deeper into Abigail's story, her role as a peacemaker and her ability to disarm even the most formidable of conflicts will shine as a testament to the impact one person can have when guided by wisdom. In a world marked by chaos, Abigail's character stands as a profound example of the beauty and power of a virtuous spirit. Nabal's wealth was vast, but his character was his downfall. As a man of considerable means, he had every reason to live with generosity and gratitude. Yet his heart was hardened by arrogance and foolishness. When David's men approached him with a humble request for provisions, they were met not with hospitality, but with contempt, a response that would spark a dangerous conflict. Nabal's reaction was not only offensive, but reckless. David's men had provided protection for Nabal's shepherds, ensuring their safety in the wilderness. This act of kindness and responsibility deserved acknowledgement. Instead, Nabal dismissed David as a nobody, a rebellious servant, undeserving of respect or aid. His words revealed his lack of wisdom and awareness, sowing the seeds of crisis. For David, Nabal's insult was more than a personal slight. It was an affront to his leadership and the honor of his men. In a culture deeply rooted in respect and loyalty, such a response was not easily overlooked. David's anger boiled over, and he vowed to avenge the insult with swift and decisive action. His words were clear: "May God deal with me, be it ever so severely, if by morning I leave alive one male of all who belong to him." 1 Samuel 25:22. Nabal's folly was not merely in his words, but in his ignorance of the consequences. His arrogance blinded him to the danger he had provoked. He had no understanding of David's strength or the loyalty of his men. What Nabal saw as a moment to assert his pride would soon bring his household to the brink of destruction. The news of Nabal's actions reached Abigail, and her response was immediate. She understood the gravity of the situation and the danger it posed to her household. While others may have hesitated or placed blame, Abigail acted with urgency and wisdom. She recognized that her intervention could mean the difference between life and death for many. Nabal's arrogance serves as a cautionary tale about the consequences of pride and thoughtlessness. His actions remind us of the importance of humility and discernment, especially when faced with decisions that impact others. In his folly, he created a crisis that could have been easily avoided, a stark contrast to Abigail's wisdom and grace. This turning point in the story highlights the destructive power of foolishness and the redeeming power of wisdom. While Nabal's folly threatened to ignite violence, it set the stage for Abigail's extraordinary act of courage and diplomacy. Her response would not only save lives, but also demonstrate the profound impact of humility and quick thinking. If this story has touched your heart, share in the comments how wisdom has guided you in difficult moments. or simply type the word courage to let us know you're inspired by Abigail's example. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories of faith and wisdom. David was a man after God's own heart, but he was also human, prone to the same emotions and impulses as any of us. When news of Nabal's insult reached him, his reaction was swift and intense. The fiery anger that arose in him was not only a response to the personal slight, but also a defense of his honor and that of his men who had faithfully protected Nabal's property. In a culture where honor was everything, Nabal's words were a public challenge to David's leadership. As a fugitive living on the edge of survival, David depended on the support and respect of others. Nabal's refusal to provide even the most basic hospitality was a direct attack on his credibility. This was more than an insult. It was a threat to David's mission and the loyalty of his followers. David's decision to gather his men and march toward Nabal's household was not made lightly. His words reveal the depth of his anger. "Strap on your swords," he commanded, rallying 400 men to take swift action. His resolve was firm and his intent was clear. Justice would be served, and Nabal's household would face the consequences of his arrogance. As David and his men set out, the tension escalated. This was not the first time David had faced provocation. However, unlike his restraint with King Saul, where he chose to honor God's anointed despite the danger, this situation felt different. Nabal was not a king, but a fool, a man whose pride endangered many lives. David's anger clouded his usual discernment, and he was prepared to deliver justice by his own hand. Yet even in this moment of fury, God was at work. The unfolding events were not beyond his control. David's anger, though justified by human standards, would soon be tempered by a voice of wisdom and grace. Abigail's intervention was divinely timed, a reminder that God often uses unexpected messengers to redirect our paths. David's anger reflects the struggles we all face when wronged. It's easy to let emotions drive our decisions, especially when we feel our honor or efforts have been dismissed. However, the story reminds us that even in our anger, God can provide a way to avoid destruction, a path of peace and restoration. As the dust of this confrontation settles, the focus shifts to Abigail. Her actions would not only change David's course, but also reveal the strength of a humble spirit. In the midst of rising tensions, her wisdom would shine as a beacon of hope and reconciliation, turning David's anger into an opportunity for grace. Abigail faced a crisis that would have paralyzed most. News of Nabal's reckless behavior and David's impending retaliation reached her ears. As the situation became clear, so did the stakes. Her household and all who depended on her leadership were at risk of annihilation. Yet instead of succumbing to fear, Abigail made a bold and courageous decision to intervene. Time was not on her side. David and his men were already on their way, swords drawn and hearts filled with anger. Abigail knew that hesitation could lead to disaster. In the face of danger, she displayed remarkable composure and wisdom. Gathering an abundant supply of provisions, she prepared to meet David herself, taking responsibility for her husband's offense. Abigail's decision to confront David was not just brave, it was extraordinary. In a patriarchal society where women rarely took such assertive roles, her actions were a testament to her strength of character. She risked everything, her safety, her reputation, and even her life, to stand between an angry warrior and a foolish husband. It was a move that required both faith and resolve. Her preparation reflected her understanding of human nature. Abigail did not come empty-handed. She brought a peace offering of bread, wine, and roasted grain, gifts that would soften the hearts of David and his men. These provisions were not merely a gesture of goodwill, but a practical solution to their immediate needs, showcasing her ability to think ahead. As she journeyed to meet David, Abigail must have felt the weight of the moment. Yet, her courage was rooted in something greater than herself. She trusted that her words and actions, guided by wisdom and humility, could turn away wrath. It was a profound act of faith, believing that God would use her to bring peace in the midst of chaos. Abigail's courage serves as an inspiration to us all. She reminds us that true bravery is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act in spite of it. Her story encourages us to step into difficult situations with wisdom and grace, trusting that our actions, no matter how small they may seem, can make a difference. As Abigail approached David, her heart must have been pounding. Yet, her resolve did not waver. In the face of danger, she was determined to be a voice of reason and reconciliation. What would happen next would forever change the course of her life and the lives of those around her. When Abigail finally reached David, her approach was as strategic as it was humble. She dismounted her donkey and bowed before him, showing respect and submission. In a moment charged with tension, Abigail's actions disarmed David before she even spoke. Her humility set the tone for the conversation and paved the way for her words to have a powerful impact. Abigail's speech was a masterpiece of wisdom and persuasion. She began by taking responsibility for the offense, even though it was her husband's foolishness that had provoked David. By saying, "Let the blame be on me alone," she not only deflected David's anger, but also demonstrated her willingness to protect her household at great personal cost. This act of selflessness immediately softened the atmosphere. With wisdom and grace, Abigail appealed to David's better nature. She reminded him of his divine calling and the anointing God had placed on his life. "The Lord will certainly make a lasting dynasty for my Lord, because you fight the Lord's battles," she said, 1 Samuel 25:28. Her words were not only affirming, but also prophetic, encouraging David to focus on his greater purpose rather than on momentary anger. Abigail's ability to anticipate David's emotions was remarkable. She acknowledged his frustration and validated his sense of justice, but she gently urged him to consider the consequences of his actions. "When the Lord has fulfilled for my Lord every good thing he promised, you will not have on your conscience the staggering burden of needless bloodshed." 1 Samuel 25:30-31. Her words were both practical and spiritual, appealing to David's sense of honor and his relationship with God. Throughout her speech, Abigail's tone was respectful yet firm. She did not shrink from addressing the gravity of the situation, but she did so with tact and reverence. Her choice of words, combined with her demeanor, turned an impending disaster into an opportunity for reconciliation. She reminded David that vengeance belonged to the Lord and that acting in haste could jeopardize his integrity. David's response to Abigail's speech was immediate and heartfelt. He praised her for her wisdom and thanked her for preventing him from committing a grave sin. "Blessed be the Lord God of Israel, who sent you to meet me this day," he said, 1 Samuel 25:32. Abigail's words had not only saved her household, but also preserved David's reputation and his walk with God. This moment highlights the extraordinary power of words spoken with wisdom and love. Abigail's ability to calm David's anger and redirect his focus demonstrates the impact that one person can have in changing the course of events. Her speech is a timeless reminder of how humility, courage, and wisdom can disarm even the most intense conflicts. Abigail's approach to David was a masterclass in humility and grace. As she came face to face with a warrior prepared for vengeance, her actions reflected profound wisdom and understanding. Rather than meeting David with defiance or fear, Abigail chose a posture of respect, bowing low to the ground. This simple yet powerful gesture immediately conveyed her intention to bring peace, not further conflict. Humility was at the heart of Abigail's approach. She did not come to David with demands or accusations, even though she could have blamed her husband for the crisis. Instead, she took responsibility for the situation, demonstrating her selflessness and her willingness to put the well-being of others above her own pride. Her words, "Let this blame be on me," reflected her readiness to bear the burden of her husband's folly, shielding her household from David's wrath. Grace defined every aspect of Abigail's interaction with David. Her words were carefully chosen, blending respect with truth. She acknowledged David's frustration and validated his sense of justice while gently guiding him toward a path of mercy. By emphasizing David's divine calling and his future as a ruler chosen by God, she redirected his focus from anger to purpose. This approach not only calmed David but also inspired him to rise above the immediate conflict. Abigail's grace extended to her demeanor. She spoke with a calm and steady voice, showing no signs of panic or fear. Her confidence came not from arrogance, but from a deep trust in God's guidance. This inner peace allowed her to stand in the gap between David's anger and her household's safety, transforming a volatile moment into one of reconciliation. Her humility and grace were not signs of weakness, but of incredible strength. In a culture where women often had limited influence, Abigail's actions were bold and courageous. She risked her own safety to stand before David, trusting that her words and demeanor could make a difference. Her willingness to act in humility rather than escalate the situation revealed a character rooted in wisdom and faith. David's response to Abigail reflected the impact of her approach. He recognized her actions as divinely inspired, praising her for her wisdom and thanking her for preventing him from shedding innocent blood. Abigail's humility and grace had not only saved her household, but also preserved David's integrity, allowing him to walk in alignment with God's plan for his life. Abigail's story reminds us that humility and grace have the power to disarm even the greatest of conflicts. By choosing to act with wisdom and faith, we too can bring peace and reconciliation to the most challenging situations. Her example inspires us to approach others with love and understanding, trusting that God can work through our words and actions to bring about His perfect will. Abigail's words to David were not merely the product of her wisdom and insight, they were divinely inspired. Her timely intervention, eloquence, and ability to touch David's heart were clear signs of God's hand at work in this critical moment. Abigail's actions remind us that God often works through individuals who are willing to listen and act in faith, even in the face of danger. From the moment Abigail decided to intervene, it was evident that God had equipped her with the courage and discernment she needed. Her ability to anticipate David's emotions and address them directly demonstrated a deep understanding that went beyond human intuition. Abigail's speech reflected divine wisdom, pointing David back to God's promises and his higher calling as Israel's anointed leader. Abigail's words were more than persuasive. They carried a spiritual authority that David immediately recognized. She reminded him of God's faithfulness and his role as the ultimate judge, saying, "The Lord has kept you from bloodshed and from avenging yourself with your own hands." 1 Samuel 25:26. These words resonated deeply with David, redirecting his focus from anger to trust in God's justice. The timing of Abigail's intervention was another indication of divine orchestration. She arrived just as David's anger was at its peak, preventing him from making a decision that could have brought guilt and regret. Her presence in that exact moment was no coincidence. It was a reminder of how God often steps into our lives through the actions of others, guiding us back to the path of righteousness. David's acknowledgement of God's hand in Abigail's actions was immediate and heartfelt. He praised God for sending her, saying, "Blessed be the Lord God of Israel who sent you to meet me this day." 1 Samuel 25:32. David recognized that Abigail's words were not just wise, but divinely inspired, saving him from a grave mistake that could have tarnished his future as a leader. Abigail's story illustrates how God uses ordinary people to accomplish extraordinary things. Her willingness to act in obedience and faith allowed her to become an instrument of divine intervention, preserving lives and upholding God's plan. Through Abigail, we see that even in the midst of chaos, God is at work, guiding and protecting those who trust in Him. This moment in Abigail's story reminds us of the importance of being open to God's leading. Just as Abigail allowed herself to be used by God to bring peace and restoration, we too can be vessels of His grace and wisdom. Her example encourages us to trust in God's timing and to act with faith, knowing that He can use our words and actions to bring about His perfect will. The moment Abigail met David was a pivotal turning point, not just in her life, but in David's as well. Standing before a king in waiting, whose anger threatened to ignite a bloodbath, Abigail used her wisdom and humility to disarm him, transforming a confrontation into a moment of profound reconciliation. Her actions were a testament to the power of grace and discernment in the face of potential disaster. David, armed and leading 400 men, was a formidable force. His frustration with Nabal's insult had pushed him to the brink of vengeance. Yet, when Abigail approached him, her posture of humility and her carefully chosen words pierced through his anger. She began by bowing low, a gesture that immediately conveyed respect and diffused tension, softening David's heart before she even spoke. Abigail's speech was the turning point. She addressed David with reverence, calling him "my lord," and acknowledging his God-given destiny. Her words reminded David of his anointing and the greater purpose God had for him. By appealing to his spiritual identity rather than his pride, Abigail redirected David's focus from the offense he had suffered to the promises God had made to him. Her plea was not one of desperation, but of confidence in God's justice. Abigail reminded David that vengeance belongs to the Lord, not to man. "The Lord your God will certainly make a lasting dynasty for my Lord, because you fight the Lord's battles," she said. 1 Samuel 25:28. These words resonated deeply with David, helping him see the futility of seeking personal revenge when God had already promised to fight his battles. David's response marked the turning point in his heart. Abigail's wisdom and grace had not only diffused his anger, but also reminded him of his integrity. He praised God for sending her, saying, "Blessed is your advice, and blessed are you, because you have kept me this day from coming to bloodshed." 1 Samuel 25:33. Her intervention had saved him from a path that could have brought guilt and tarnished his future as a leader. This encounter illustrates how wisdom and humility can disarm even the most powerful forces. Abigail's ability to navigate a volatile situation with grace and insight not only preserved her household, but also strengthened David's character. Her actions demonstrated that true strength lies not in confrontation, but in the courage to seek peace. The turning point in Abigail's story reminds us that God often uses unexpected people to bring about His will. Through her, we see the profound impact of a single moment of courage and wisdom. Abigail's example challenges us to be peacemakers in our own lives, trusting that God can use us to bring about reconciliation and restoration in the most unlikely circumstances. Abigail's story is a profound illustration of the transformative power of wisdom. Her actions in the face of imminent danger reveal lessons that transcend time, offering guidance for how we can approach conflicts, relationships, and moments of decision in our own lives. Through Abigail, we see that wisdom is not just intellectual knowledge, but a practical, God-given ability to navigate life's challenges with grace and discernment. The first lesson we learn from Abigail is the importance of acting with courage in difficult situations. She did not shy away from her responsibility to intervene, even though the stakes were high. Abigail's willingness to step into a volatile situation reminds us that wisdom often requires bravery, a readiness to do what is right, even when it is uncomfortable or risky. Abigail also teaches us the value of humility in resolving conflicts. By bowing before David and addressing him with respect, she set a tone that diffused his anger and opened the door for reconciliation. Her humility was not weakness, but strength, allowing her to communicate effectively and earn David's trust. This example shows us that a humble approach can often achieve more than force or confrontation. Another powerful lesson from Abigail's actions is the importance of choosing words wisely. Her speech to David was thoughtful, respectful, and rooted in truth. She appealed to his higher calling and reminded him of God's promises, redirecting his focus from vengeance to righteousness. Abigail's words were not only persuasive, but also life-giving, demonstrating the power of speaking with wisdom and grace. Abigail's story also highlights the need for discernment in recognizing when to act. She understood the urgency of the situation and responded quickly, without hesitation. Her decisiveness was crucial in preventing a tragedy. This teaches us to be attentive to God's guidance and to act promptly when we sense His leading. Finally, Abigail's actions remind us of the impact one person can have. Her intervention not only saved lives, but also preserved David's integrity and strengthened his relationship with God. Abigail's story is a testament to how God can use a single act of wisdom and courage to change the course of events, bringing peace and restoration where there was once conflict. The lessons from Abigail's story challenge us to seek God's wisdom in our own lives. Whether we are facing personal conflicts, making difficult decisions, or navigating relationships, her example encourages us to rely on humility, discernment, and faith. Abigail shows us that wisdom is not just a gift, but a responsibility to use our understanding and resources to bring about God's purposes in the world. While Abigail acted with wisdom and humility to avert disaster, Nabal's story took a very different turn. His arrogance and disregard for others not only jeopardized his household, but also revealed a heart disconnected from God. The unfolding events of Nabal's fate serve as a sobering reminder of the consequences of pride and foolishness, and of God's divine justice at work. After Abigail's intervention, she returned to find Nabal feasting like a king, completely unaware of the danger he had narrowly escaped. His heart was merry, and he was drunk, a clear contrast to the gravity of the situation he had created. This scene paints a vivid picture of Nabal's character, a man consumed by his own pleasures, oblivious to the consequences of his actions. The following morning, once Nabal was sober, Abigail informed him of what had transpired. Upon hearing the full account, Nabal's heart failed him, and he became like a stone. The Bible describes this as a direct consequence of his actions, showing that even the most arrogant and powerful are not beyond God's reach. 10 days later, the Lord struck Nabal, and he died. 1 Samuel 25:38. His end was a clear act of divine judgment. Nabal's fate stands in stark contrast to Abigail's wisdom and David's restraint. While Abigail's actions brought life and reconciliation, Nabal's foolishness led to his downfall. His story serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of pride, selfishness, and a lack of discernment. It reminds us that our choices have consequences, not just for ourselves but for those around us. God's intervention in Nabal's death also underscores a powerful truth: vengeance belongs to the Lord. David, who had initially set out to exact justice by his own hand, recognized this when he heard of Nabal's death. He praised God, saying, "The Lord has upheld my cause and has kept his servant from wrongdoing." 1 Samuel 25:39. David's trust in God's justice was affirmed, highlighting the importance of leaving matters of vengeance in his hand. Nabal's story challenges us to reflect on our own lives. Are we living with humility and wisdom, or are we allowing pride and foolishness to guide our decisions? His downfall serves as a warning to seek God's guidance in all we do, remembering that he is both merciful and just. In the midst of this judgment, Abigail's role shines even brighter. Her actions not only preserved her household, but also aligned her with God's will. Nabal's fate was sealed by his own choices, but Abigail's faithfulness and courage brought redemption and hope. Their contrasting stories reveal the stark difference between a life guided by wisdom and one consumed by arrogance. Abigail's story did not end with her courageous act of peacemaking or even with Nabal's death. Instead, it marked the beginning of a new chapter in her life, one that transformed her from a wise and humble wife into a queen. This transition was not merely a change in her circumstances, but a testament to how God honors those who act with faith and wisdom. After Nabal's death, David wasted no time in recognizing Abigail's extraordinary character. He sent messengers to her with a proposal of marriage, a gesture that underscored the deep impression she had left on him. David saw in Abigail not only a partner of beauty and intelligence, but also someone who shared his values and could support him in his God-ordained mission. Abigail's response to David's proposal reflected the same humility and grace she had shown before. Rather than celebrating her elevation to a position of honor, she replied, "Here is your servant, ready to wash the feet of my Lord's servants." 1 Samuel 25:41. Her words revealed a heart that remained grounded and focused on serving others, even as she stepped into a role of greater influence. Her marriage to David brought new challenges and opportunities. As a queen, Abigail continued to embody the wisdom and humility that had defined her earlier actions. She became a trusted partner to David, offering guidance and support during some of the most turbulent moments of his journey to kingship. Her presence in David's life was not just a blessing to him, but also to the people he served. Abigail's transformation from the wife of a foolish man to the Queen of Israel reflects God's ability to redeem and elevate those who trust in him. Her story is a powerful reminder that faithfulness in small things often leads to greater responsibilities and blessings. Abigail's journey shows us that God sees our hearts and rewards those who act with integrity and courage. This transformation also highlights the importance of character over circumstance. Abigail's wisdom and grace were evident long before she became a queen. It was her consistent faithfulness in difficult situations that prepared her for the role she would eventually take on. Her life challenges us to cultivate wisdom, humility, and faith, knowing that God can use these qualities to shape our futures. As Abigail stepped into her new role, she remained a symbol of God's provision and justice. Her story reminds us that no matter our current circumstances, God has a purpose and plan for our lives. Abigail's rise from a peacemaker in the wilderness to a queen in the palace inspires us to trust in God's timing and to live each day with faith and courage. Abigail's story offers timeless lessons in leadership that resonate far beyond her role as a peacemaker and queen. Her actions demonstrate that true leadership is not about authority or power, but about character, wisdom, and the ability to inspire others toward peace and righteousness. Abigail's legacy challenges us to redefine what it means to lead in our families, communities, and personal lives. One of the most profound lessons from Abigail's leadership is her ability to act decisively in moments of crisis. When faced with a dangerous situation, she did not wait for others to step in. Instead, she took the initiative, recognizing that her actions could prevent disaster. This decisiveness reflects the courage and foresight essential to effective leadership, reminding us that leaders must often act boldly to protect and guide those they serve. Another hallmark of Abigail's leadership was her humility. Despite her intelligence and strength, she consistently approached others with respect and grace. Her willingness to bow before David and take responsibility for her husband's folly highlights a humility that is often missing in modern concepts of leadership. Abigail's example teaches us that humility is not a weakness, but a strength that builds trust and fosters reconciliation. Abigail also exemplified the power of wise communication. Her speech to David was a masterclass in diplomacy, blending truth, encouragement, and accountability. She addressed his anger while redirecting his focus to his divine calling, offering a solution that aligned with God's will. This ability to speak with clarity and purpose is a crucial skill for any leader, reminding us of the importance of thoughtful and intentional communication. Her leadership extended beyond words to actions. Abigail's preparation of gifts for David and his men showed her practical understanding of their needs, reinforcing her message with tangible support. This balance of words and actions reflects a holistic approach to leadership, where vision is matched by the willingness to do the work required to achieve it. Abigail's legacy as a leader is further seen in her lasting impact on David's life. Her intervention not only saved lives, but also preserved David's integrity and strengthened his relationship with God. By leading with wisdom and humility, Abigail became a source of inspiration and guidance for a future king, shaping his journey in ways that would affect an entire nation. Finally, Abigail's story challenges us to lead by example. Her life reminds us that leadership is not confined to titles or positions. It is about using our influence to make a positive difference. Whether we are guiding a family, supporting a friend, or resolving conflicts in our communities, Abigail's example encourages us to lead with wisdom, courage, and faith. Abigail's legacy as a leader endures because it is rooted in principles that transcend time. Her story invites us to reflect on how we can embody these qualities in our own lives, becoming leaders who bring peace, wisdom, and hope to the world around us. Abigail's story is not just a historical account, it's a living example of how wisdom can transform lives and situations. Her actions demonstrate practical principles that remain relevant for us today, offering guidance on how to navigate challenges with grace, humility, and faith. Applying Abigail's example can help us cultivate wisdom in our own lives and bring peace to those around us. One of the most striking aspects of Abigail's story is her ability to act with courage and decisiveness. In moments of crisis, she didn't allow fear or uncertainty to paralyze her. Instead, she stepped forward with faith, trusting that her actions could make a difference. Today, we are often faced with situations that require bold decisions. Abigail's example reminds us to trust God's guidance and take action when necessary, even when the path is unclear. Abigail also teaches us the importance of humility in resolving conflicts. Her willingness to bow before David and take responsibility for a situation she didn't create shows us how humility can open doors to reconciliation. In our daily lives, adopting a posture of humility can help us mend broken relationships, de-escalate tensions, and build stronger connections with others. Another lesson from Abigail's story is the power of wise communication. Her carefully chosen words not only diffused David's anger, but also inspired him to focus on his higher calling. This serves as a reminder that our words carry immense power, to heal or to harm, to build up or to tear down. In a world often marked by harsh and thoughtless speech, Abigail's example challenges us to speak with kindness, wisdom, and intention. Abigail's actions also highlight the value of preparation and thoughtfulness. Before approaching David, she gathered provisions to meet his needs, showing that true wisdom is both practical and compassionate. This reminds us that wisdom isn't just about making the right decisions, it's also about being prepared to meet the needs of others with generosity and care. Finally, Abigail's faith in God was the foundation of her wisdom. She trusted that God was in control, even in the midst of chaos, and her actions reflected that trust. In our own lives, cultivating a relationship with God through prayer and study of His Word can help us develop the discernment we need to navigate life's challenges with confidence and peace. Applying Abigail's example today means embracing these principles in our own circumstances. Whether we are resolving a conflict, making a difficult decision, or seeking to be a source of peace in a chaotic world, her story inspires us to act with faith, humility, and wisdom. By doing so, we can reflect God's love and bring hope and restoration to those around us. Abigail's story reveals the hidden power of a gentle spirit, a quality that often goes unnoticed in a world that values assertiveness and control. Her humility, grace, and wisdom exemplify the profound strength that comes from a heart aligned with God's will. Abigail's gentle spirit not only disarmed David's anger, but also preserved lives and brought reconciliation in a moment of great tension. Gentleness does not mean weakness. In fact, Abigail's actions required incredible strength. She stood before a warrior, ready for battle, unarmed and vulnerable, yet her words carried more power than any sword. Her gentleness was rooted in her confidence in God's justice and her ability to see beyond the immediate conflict to the greater purpose at hand. Abigail's gentle spirit was evident in her approach to David. She did not come with accusations or demands, but with humility and respect. Her words were carefully chosen to bring peace, and her demeanor reflected her deep trust in God. This combination of humility and courage demonstrates that gentleness is a powerful tool for diffusing anger and fostering understanding. In our own lives, we often encounter situations where tempers flare and conflicts arise. Abigail's example reminds us that a gentle response can turn away wrath and create opportunities for reconciliation. When we choose to respond with kindness and patience, we reflect God's character and open the door for His peace to work through us. The hidden power of a gentle spirit also lies in its ability to inspire change. David, who had been on the brink of vengeance, was moved by Abigail's words and actions. Her gentleness not only calmed his anger, but also reminded him of his divine calling. This transformative effect of a gentle spirit shows that it has the power to influence hearts and redirect paths. Abigail's story challenges us to embrace gentleness in our own lives. It is a quality that requires intentionality and strength, especially in a culture that often rewards aggression. By cultivating a gentle spirit, we can become instruments of peace and reconciliation, bringing hope to a world in need of God's love. Ultimately, the power of a gentle spirit is a reflection of God's work within us. Abigail's actions were not merely the result of her own wisdom, but the fruit of a heart surrendered to God. Her story reminds us that when we allow God to shape our character, He can use us to bring about His purposes in ways we never imagined. Abigail's story leaves us with a profound understanding of how wisdom, humility, and faith can transform even the most challenging circumstances. Her actions remind us that true strength is found not in force or confrontation, but in a gentle spirit guided by God's wisdom. Abigail's ability to disarm a king, save her household, and align herself with God's will is a testament to the power of a life surrendered to His purpose. Throughout her journey, Abigail demonstrated that one person's courage and discernment can change the course of events. Her humility in addressing David and her faith in God's justice show us the importance of trusting in His plans, even when faced with uncertainty. Her legacy challenges us to seek wisdom in our own lives, to act with humility, and to be peacemakers in a world often filled with conflict. As we reflect on Abigail's story, let us strive to emulate her example. Let us approach life's challenges with the same faith, grace, and courage that she displayed, trusting that God can use us to bring about His purposes. Whether in our families, communities, or personal lives, we have the opportunity to make a difference by embodying the qualities that made Abigail a beacon of hope and reconciliation. Let's close with a prayer inspired by Abigail's story. Dear Lord, thank You for the example of Abigail, whose wisdom and faith remind us of the power of a humble and gentle spirit. Help us to act with courage and discernment in the face of challenges, trusting in Your guidance and justice. May we be peacemakers, bringing Your love and grace into every situation. Use us, Lord, to reflect Your light and fulfill Your purposes in our lives. In Jesus' name, amen. If Abigail's story has touched your heart, share this message with friends and loved ones who may also find encouragement in her example. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories of faith and inspiration, and activate notifications to stay connected with our journey through the Bible.